So, welcome to our week 5 discussion. If you are doing the Bible reading along with the groups, if, if you're doing this study book that takes you through the 52 weeks, we actually are on week 4 in this book. But we're in our week 5 together. I just didn't want people to be confused by that. We actually started um, talking together and discussing things a week before we actually started our Bible reading. And so just want us to be all on the same page with that. Even if you are not doing the Bible reading or you have fallen behind on the Bible reading or not at the same place, I encourage you to still keep up with the little discussion videos and come to groups and check into group and discussion. You are still going to be gaining, you're still going to be able to join in the discussion even if you're not at the same place in the reading. And so through the reading, we're actually this week we're going to be finishing up Exodus. And so a lot of stuff happens in Genesis and Exodus, more than those of us that are reading it are just like almost overwhelmed of all of the things that have happened in these chapters and in these short weeks that we've been reading. And a few questions always seem to kind of bubble to the top. And this week, God gave Moses and Aaron, he gave them all these instructions for dealing with Pharaoh to help free the Hebrew people from Egypt. And then after the people are free, he gives all of these instructions to the to the Israelite people, instructions about what they're eating, what they're doing, instructions about how they deal with each other, instructions for every little thing. He gives Moses instructions detailed down to the measurements of the tabernacle. And so the question keeps surfacing: why? Why all these instructions, God? What is He doing? What is the purpose of this? And one of the things that I think we have to kind of frame in our framework is that, what is God's purpose with all of this? A couple people ask the questions when you read the narrative of Pharaoh and his refusal to let the people go. It says over and over that God hardened his heart. And so, naturally, if we're reading that, one of the things is, well, why didn't God just soften his heart so he would let the people go? I mean, if he hardened the heart, why didn't he just soften it and avoid all of the plagues and all of the things that happen and just take his people? Well, the thing is, the story really isn't about Pharaoh. Um, the story really isn't even about the Hebrew people being freed from slavery. The story is really about the Hebrew people coming to trust God unconditionally. And he does this in his plan. The way he plans to do this is to show them and to have them become dependent by seeing all these miracles and all the plagues. And then when they're out in the desert, they're relying on God for their every need, their food, their water, everything. And this whole process was not about freeing the Hebrew people. That is what happens. They get freed from Egyptian slavery, but it's the process of and the plan God has put in motion. The purpose of it is for his people to come to know and trust and love him and be his people and trust him unconditionally. And he even says that in Exodus 16:4. They're starting to complain because they're out in the desert and they don't see anything to eat and there's nothing to eat. And it says, the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. And so Moses finally understands this. I think the plagues in getting out of Egypt, Moses became dependent on God, and he became able to see that this was God's plan for his people to come to be his people, and he understood that. And in Exodus 20, after they're in the desert, and Moses is going up and he's going to go talk to God, and the people are still all afraid. And it says, Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Moses finally got it, but the people were still confused. Why all these tests? Why all these instructions? The people needed to build dependence on God and become his people. So if you were in Sunday night group, you heard this story. So I apologize for repeating, but I explained Exodus to my daughter the other day, and I explained it as saying Exodus is all about socks and shoes. It's all about socks and shoes. You see, when I was a kid growing up, um, my dad had a rule: we always had to wear our socks and shoes if we were outside at all. And, as a little kid, I didn't understand that rule. I didn't like it. I remember that I went outside without my socks and shoes. And one time I remember I actually got stung and stepped on a wasp. Um, the other time I went outside without my socks and shoes, and my dad caught me, and I got spanked, and he was really mad, and I didn't really understand it at that time. And the other thing about socks and shoes in my family are my children and my husband growing up. My husband had this thing about he always wanted the kids to wear socks in the house or whatever. And different houses have different rules. Take your shoes off at the door, all those kind of things. And so one of my children was just so frustrated by this. Why do I have to wear my socks? Why do I have to do that? And what I knew is that growing up, my husband, his mother just let him run without socks and shoes all the time and didn't really think that was a priority. Well, my husband always had cut up feet and scabbed up and all kinds of stuff going on. And so the kids used to tease him and call him hamburger toes because his feet were just all cut up in a mess. And that affected him. And that's why he had this little thing about wearing socks and shoes. And I used to say to my daughter, just practice the obedience. Just it's a rule and you don't like it and you don't know why it exists, but it's not going to hurt you and it's not going to really impact your life that much. Just practice being obedient and do it, because there's going to be a lot of times in life where we just have to be obedient to God, and we don't understand what his plan is, and we don't understand the reasoning. In fact, probably most of the time, we're not going to understand the reasoning. My dad, his reasoning was so straightforward when I was older. I just didn't get it when I was a little kid. My dad was a carpenter. He worked all the time. We had a big garage, and he was always building stuff outside in the driveway and in the yard and putting stairs together and stuff like that. There was nails all over our yard. And so my dad's rule to always wear the socks and shoes was just about keeping me safe. When the Israelites were in the desert, God was providing their basic needs and sustenance. He was teaching them to depend on them for their life itself. And that is this whole instruction thing, that he's getting us to see that he is our provider. We trust him. He provides for all of our needs. And, we all still struggle with that today, even in basic things. Um, Trusting God with our finances, trusting God with our health, trusting God with our children and our children's health and lives, and all of these things where God really asks us to trust him. and it's not always easy, and we see how the Israelites had all of this like in front of them proof, and they still struggled with trusting God, and being obedient to all of his instructions. And we see through the story of the Hebrew people that it's easy to trust God when things are going great. I mean, they went from singing the song about how God delivered them from Egypt to being afraid and doubting that God was going to provide for water, that God was going to take care of their basic needs. They went from the highs of seeing God as the fire in the pillar of fire in the desert to questioning and doubting and wondering if God really cared about them or if there was another God that they could pray to. They had all of these things happen, and we can see that it's easy. And when the good things are happening, it's easier to trust God. So I want our discussions this week to kind of be about how hard it is to trust God in the hard times and the difficult stuff and when it's hard. Um,